Level 1. The ingredient handler. You unwrap a chocolate bar in seconds. The paper opens with a soft crackle. The surface underneath is clean, smooth, and perfectly divided into neat squares. It smells sweet before it even touches your tongue. To most people, chocolate feels simple. A small reward, a snack, something you buy, open, break, and eat without thinking about where it came from. But you do not enter the chocolate factory through the gift shop. You enter through the ingredient warehouse. The air is cool, dry, and heavy with the smell of cocoa powder, cardboard sugar, and sealed bags stacked higher than your head. Pallets sit in straight rows under white lights. Sacks of cocoa, boxes of sugar, blocks of cocoa butter, milk powder containers, wrapping materials, and shipping cartons wait in different zones. Nothing here looks smooth, nothing looks sweet yet. Your first job is simple. Move the right ingredients to the right place. Scan the batch codes. Check the weight. Keep cocoa separate from sugar. Sugar separate from milk powder. Packaging separate from raw ingredients. Do not assume 2 sacks are the same because they look alike. Do not send the wrong pallet forward just because the line is waiting. A supervisor hands you a scanner and points toward a stack of cocoa bags. You grip the first bag and feel its weight pull through your arms and shoulders. Somewhere far ahead, this may become a chocolate bar wrapped in clean foil. But right now, it is just a heavy ingredient in your hands, and one wrong scan can travel deeper into the factory than you can imagine. Then the scanner beeps red. Wrong batch. Your chest tightens. You freeze for half a second, then pull the bag back before it leaves the warehouse. The mistake is caught early, but the lesson is immediate. Sweetness begins with control. And as you scan again, waiting for the green light, one question follows you into the noise of the factory. How far can you climb before chocolate stops tasting sweet and starts feeling like pressure? Level 2, the cocoa roasting assistant. At level 2, the factory stops smelling dry. You leave the ingredient warehouse and step into the roasting area, where the air changes before you even reach the machines. The smell of cocoa becomes warmer, deeper, darker. It no longer feels like powder sealed in sacks. It feels alive, almost sharp, as if the beans are waking up under heat. Large roasting machines sit in rows, their metal bodies humming under yellow, industrial lights. Trays of cocoa beans wait beside them. Workers move carefully, checking loads, watching timers, listening to the low, turning sound inside the drums. The room is hotter than the warehouse, and the heat stays on your skin. Your job is to assist the roasting process. You help move bean trays, check batch tags, load the correct cocoa into the correct machine. Watch the color change, smell the difference between raw, under-roasted, and nearly finished. At first you think the machine does most of the work. Then a senior worker opens a small sample tray and lets you see the beans. "They are not ready yet," she says. You look closely. The difference seems tiny, a little too pale, a little too grassy in smell. Not wrong enough for a beginner to notice, but wrong enough to change the flavor of everything that follows. That is when you understand the pressure of heat. If the beans are under-roasted, the chocolate may taste flat, sour, or harsh. If they are pushed too far, a burnt note can spread through the whole batch. The mistake will not stay in this room. It will travel into grinding, mixing, tempering, molding, packaging, and finally into someone's mouth. Then the timer sounds. You help pull a tray from the roaster. Warm cocoa air rises around your face. The beans look darker now, more fragrant, more serious. They are still not chocolate, but they have crossed a line. At level 1, you learned that sweetness begins with control. At level 2, you learn that flavor begins with heat. And once the cocoa has been changed by fire, the next level will crush it into something smooth, heavy, and impossible to return to its old form. Level 3, the grinding and mixing operator. At level 3, the cocoa stops looking like beans. You step into the grinding and mixing area, and the sound changes again. The sharp movement of the roasting room is replaced by a deep, steady mechanical rhythm. Motors turn, stainless steel pipes vibrate softly. Large machines grind, press, and move thick cocoa mass through the system like something heavy, being pulled into a new identity. The smell is stronger here. Warm cocoa fills the air, mixed with sugar, cocoa butter, and milk powder. It is closer to the chocolate people recognize, but not yet smooth enough, not yet balanced enough, not yet ready to become something beautiful. Your job is to help monitor the grinding and mixing process. You check ingredient flow, watch the mixture level, make sure the right batch enters the right machine, record simple readings, clean around the station, help the operator compare texture samples. At first, the chocolate mass looks almost perfect to you. Dark, glossy, slow-moving, rich. Then the operator hands you a small sample. You rub it carefully between your gloved fingers. It looks smooth, but you can feel a faint graininess. Tiny, almost invisible. The operator notices your face and nods. "Not ready," he says. That tiny texture matters. If the cocoa is not ground enough, the chocolate feels rough. If the sugar is not blended correctly, sweetness will not spread evenly. If the cocoa butter ratio is wrong, the mixture may become too thick, too thin, too dull, or too difficult to temper later. You look at the machine again. Suddenly it no longer feels like a giant mixer. It feels like a judge. It decides whether raw ingredients become something elegant or remain just a heavy paste with a sweet smell. A warning light blinks near one mixing tank. Not a major failure, just a flow issue. But everyone reacts quickly. The operator slows the feed. You help check the inlet. And the mixture keeps moving, but now you understand the fear. One small imbalance can become a whole batch that never feels right. At level 2, you learn that flavor begins with heat. At level 3, you learn that texture begins with pressure, friction, and patience. And once the chocolate becomes smooth enough to move forward, the next level will teach you that beauty depends on something even harder to control. Temperature. Level 4. The tempering line worker. At level 4, chocolate becomes beautiful for the first time. You step beside the tempering line, where the thick chocolate from grinding and mixing now moves through polished stainless steel channels. Under the factory lights, it flows like dark silk. Smooth, glossy, almost unreal. This is the chocolate people imagine when they think of sweetness. But the workers here do not look relaxed. They watch temperature. They watch flow. They watch shine. Your job is to assist the tempering process, the careful control of heat and cooling that gives chocolate its snap, surface, and stable texture. You check the display. You help take small samples. You watch the chocolate pass through the line, warm enough to move, cool enough to form correctly, controlled enough to stay beautiful after it leaves the machine. At first it feels strange that something so attractive can be so fragile. Then a technician shows you a test piece from a previous batch. It looks dull. The surface is cloudy, almost dusty, even though it is clean. It does not have the sharp shine you saw on the flowing line. Temperature drift, she says. 2 simple words, but behind them is a whole batch at risk. If tempering is wrong, chocolate can lose its gloss, it can bloom, it can feel soft, break badly, or look old before it ever reaches a store. The flavor may still be there, but the customer sees the surface first. And if the surface looks wrong, trust breaks before taste begins. You take a small sample tray and hold it under the light. The chocolate settles into a thin layer, shining back at you. You wait. Everyone waits. A few degrees, a few minutes, a small delay in correction. That is all it takes for the beauty to fail. The sample sets clean. The technician nods and the line continues. At level 3, you learned that texture begins with pressure, friction, and patience. At level 4, you learn that beauty begins with temperature. And now that the chocolate is smooth, glossy, and ready, the factory sends it toward the moment where it finally takes shape. Into the mold, into the cold, and into the form the world recognizes. Level 5, the mold and cooling worker. At level 5, chocolate finally becomes something you recognize. You stand beside the molding line where glossy tempered chocolate flows into rows of waiting molds. The movement is smooth and almost hypnotic. Dark liquid fills each rectangular cavity with exact timing, spreading into corners, leveling under the lights, and turning from a moving stream into the beginning of a bar. This is the first time the product looks close to what people buy. But the factory does not let you admire it for long. Your job is to help the molding and cooling process stay consistent. You check that molds are clean, watch the fill level, look for trapped air. Help move trays onto the vibrating section where gentle shaking spreads the chocolate and forces tiny bubbles upward before they become hidden flaws. The machine vibrates softly through the floor. You watch small air bubbles rise and disappear. It seems minor, almost delicate. Then a senior worker shows you a bar from an earlier failed batch. One corner is thin. The surface has a small pit. A faint crack runs along the edge. It is still chocolate. But it is not acceptable. A customer may never know the temperature curve, the grinding time, or the ingredient batch. But they will see a cracked corner. They will feel a broken edge. And they will open the wrapper and judge the factory in 1 second. The molds move into the cooling tunnel. The air gets colder near the entrance. The sweet smell becomes cleaner, sharper. You wait as the chocolate disappears into the cold and comes back firmer, quieter, no longer flowing. When the first set of bars releases from the molds, you hold one carefully and feel the weight of its shape. At level 4, you learned that beauty begins with temperature. At level 5, you learn that form begins with timing, vibration, and cold. Because chocolate does not become a bar just because it tastes right. It has to set correctly. It has to look trustworthy. It has to survive being handled, wrapped, shipped, displayed, opened, and broken. And once it finally looks finished, someone has to decide whether that finished look is good enough to leave the factory. Level 6, the Quality Control Inspector. At level 6, the chocolate reaches your table looking finished. That is exactly why you do not trust it. The bars arrive from cooling in clean trays, each one shaped, solid, and familiar. The surface catches the inspection light. The edges are sharp. The sections are divided neatly. To someone outside the factory, these bars already look ready to wrap, box, ship, and sell. But your job is to look closer than desire. You lift the first bar with gloved hands and turn it under the lamp. You check the shine, the color, the corners, the surface, the weight, the snap test sample beside you, the faint smell, the underside where a bubble may have hidden. Every bar is simple only until someone is paid to inspect it. A senior QC inspector places 2 bars side by side. At first they look the same. Then she tilts one under the light. A dull patch appears near the edge, not large, not dramatic, but enough to matter. Another bar has a tiny crack across one corner. A third is slightly underweight. A fourth has a small pit where air failed to escape before cooling. You begin sorting. Pass tray, review tray, reject tray. The work feels quiet, but the pressure is not quiet at all. If you reject too much, production slows and managers ask questions. If you approve too easily, a flawed bar leaves the factory wearing the company's confidence. Then you find one that hurts to reject. It is almost perfect. Smooth surface, clean shape, good color. But when you turn it toward the lamp, a hairline crack catches the light. You know someone else might miss it. You know the line wants this batch cleared. You mark it for rejection anyway. At level 5, you learned that form begins with timing, vibration, and cold. At level 6, you learn that finished does not mean safe. Quality control is the uncomfortable moment when sweetness has to prove itself. The chocolate may smell perfect, look perfect from a distance, and still fail under light. And once you learn how easily a finished bar can be stopped, the next level shows you another truth. Even perfect chocolate can be ruined by the machine that wraps it. Level 7. The Packaging Machine Technician. At level 7, the chocolate is already good enough to eat. That is the dangerous part. The bars have passed cooling. They have survived inspection. Their surfaces shine cleanly under the lights. Their edges are sharp. Their weight is right. Their smell is exactly what the factory wants. But now they enter a new section where the product can still be damaged, delayed, or made to look careless before it ever reaches a customer. You step into the packaging area. The sound here is faster than the earlier rooms. Wrapping film spins from large rolls. Foil slides through guide rails. Cardboard sleeves move in stacks. Machines fold, seal, press and push finished bars forward with a rhythm that feels almost too quick for human eyes. Your job is to keep the packaging line alive. You check machine alignment. Watch the foil feed. Inspect the seal. Clear minor jams. Replace wrapping rolls. Make sure the chocolate enters the machine straight and leaves wrapped cleanly. At first, packaging feels less important than roasting, tempering, or quality control. Then the line stops. A warning light flashes above the wrapper. Several bars sit halfway through the machine, good chocolate trapped inside crooked foil. Workers look toward you. The shift leader checks the time. And the factory has already spent ingredients, heat, grinding, cooling, and inspection to bring these bars here. Now one jam can freeze everything. You open the machine guard and see the problem. The wrapping material has drifted slightly off path. Not torn, not destroyed, just shifted enough to fold badly around the bar. Just enough. You adjust the guide, clear the jam, and run a test bar through. It exits clean, tight corners, smooth wrapper, sealed edge. The line starts again and the machine swallows the moment like nothing happened. At level 6, you learned that finish does not mean safe. At level 7, you learn that presentation is also protection. Because a perfect chocolate bar can still fail if it reaches the world looking bent, loose, wrinkled, or careless. And once you can keep the packaging line moving, the next level asks whether you can keep the whole factory moving at once. Level 8, the shift leader/production manager. At level 8, you stop working on one part of the chocolate. Now the entire shift moves through you. You stand on the production floor with a radio clipped to your vest, a tablet in your hand, and the smell of cocoa coming from 3 directions at once. Behind you, roasted beans move toward grinding. Ahead of you, tempered chocolate flows into molds. To your right, cooled bars reach quality control. Farther down the line, packaging machines fold wrappers faster than people can speak. Your job is to keep all of it moving without letting the factory lie to itself. The first problem comes from roasting. One batch needs more time. If you rush it, flavor suffers. If you wait, the mixing line slows. Then QC calls about a group of bars with tiny cracks near the edge. Packaging reports a film roll running unevenly. A worker asks if the line will run late again. Everyone wants an answer. Production wants numbers. Quality wants time. Workers want a fair shift. Shipping wants finished cartons. The chocolate itself wants perfect timing, perfect heat, perfect cooling, and perfect handling. You learn quickly that leadership is not standing above pressure. It is standing where every pressure meets. You give roasting the extra time. You tell mixing to slow the next feed instead of forcing the batch forward. You keep QC reviewing the cracked bars even though it hurts the numbers. You send a technician to packaging before the next jam becomes a full stop. Then you call shipping with the truth. The order may leave later than planned, but it will not leave careless. Nobody is fully happy. That is how you know the decision is real. At the lower levels, mistakes came through your hands: a wrong cocoa bag, an over-roasted bean, a grainy texture, a dull surface, a cracked bar, a crooked wrapper. Now the mistakes come through people, schedules, machines, and deadlines all at once. By the end of the shift, the numbers are not perfect. But the line is honest. The workers are still speaking up. The flawed bars did not leave. The machine did not fail. At level 7, you learn that presentation is also protection. At level 8, you learn that management is not about making chocolate faster. It is about deciding which pressure the factory can carry without ruining the product or the people behind it. And above the factory floor, another system is waiting. one where cocoa, sugar, packaging, containers, holidays and global demand move faster than any single shift can control. Level 9, the cocoa supply chain. Director. At level 9, the chocolate factory becomes smaller. Not because it matters less, but because you are no longer standing inside only one building. You're looking at the entire network that feeds it. On the screen in front of you, the factory is only one point among many. Cocoa suppliers, sugar producers, milk powder vendors, cocoa butter processors, packaging plants, warehouses, cold storage rooms, trucks, ports, containers, and retail distribution centers. The smell of warm chocolate is gone. The sound of roasters, grinders, cooling tunnels, and packaging machines is gone too. Now the pressure is quiet and larger. Your job is to make sure the right ingredients arrive before the factory needs them, the right packaging is available before the bars are ready, and the right amount of chocolate reaches stores before holidays, promotions, and seasonal demand swallow the forecast. A warning appears on the supply dashboard. A cocoa shipment is delayed. Another warehouse has enough sugar, but not enough packaging sleeves for the holiday design. One factory is ahead of schedule. Another is short on cocoa butter. Sales forecasts show demand rising in one region, but slowing in another. Every option moves pressure somewhere else. If you rush ingredients by air, cost rises. If you wait for the delayed shipment, the factory may slow down. If you shift cocoa butter from another plant, that plant may suffer next week. If you overproduce before a holiday, warehouses fill with bars that may not move fast enough. If you underproduce, empty shelves make the brand look unprepared. You approve a partial reroute. You warn the factory early. You shift packaging from a slower region. You protect the highest priority orders and accept that not every market will receive exactly what it asked for. On the screen, the decision looks clean, but you know what it means below. A production manager will adjust the shift. A packaging team will change materials. A warehouse crew will reload pallets. A truck will leave at a different hour. Someone far from this office will feel the weight of a decision they never saw being made. At level 8, you learn to manage pressure inside one shift. At level 9, you learn that supply chain is the art of moving pressure across distance without pretending it disappears. And above even this network, there is one final level. The people who decide what kind of chocolate the world should crave next. Level 10, the global chocolate brand decision maker. At level 10, chocolate no longer moves through machines. It sits quietly on a polished table. You are inside a global brand office far above the factory floor, where chocolate bars are arranged as samples, prototypes, seasonal flavors, packaging concepts, and future releases. The room smells faintly sweet, but not like the roasting area, not like the grinding room, not like the cooling line. Here the sweetness feels controlled, cleaned, and turned into strategy. Around you sit people who do not talk about one cracked bar or one delayed wrapper. They talk about markets. Which flavor should launch next? Which package will stand out on shelves? Which region should receive the first shipment? How many bars should be made before the holiday rush begins? Should the brand protect quality and produce slowly or chase demand while the trend is still hot? You look at a sample bar in front of you. At level 1, chocolate was only heavy cocoa sacks in your hands. At level 2, heat changed the beans. At level 3, grinding and mixing turned ingredients into a smooth mass. At level 4, temperature gave it shine. At level 5, molds and cooling gave it shape. At level 6, quality control judged whether it deserved to continue. At level 7, packaging protected its image. At level 8, one shift carried the pressure of the whole line. At level 9, the supply chain moved cocoa, sugar, wrappers, containers, and demand across distance. Now all of that lives inside one decision. You can approve a bigger launch and make the numbers look strong. But that means more cocoa, more packaging, more shifts, more machine hours, more logistics pressure, and more chances for the system to hide strain behind clean reports. You can approve a smaller launch and protect the factory. But if demand rises, stores may run out, competitors may take the moment, and the brand may lose attention. There is no perfect answer, only consequences with better lighting. So when your turn comes, you do not only ask what flavor people will crave, you ask what the system can make without damaging the people, quality, and trust behind it. You approve the launch, but with a slower ramp, stronger quality checks, realistic delivery windows, and a warning that sweetness should not move faster than the factory can safely follow. Some executives look disappointed. Some nod. Some only look back at the numbers. At the highest level, power does not taste sweet. It tastes distant. You no longer carry cocoa sacks. You no longer feel heat from the roaster or cold air from the cooling tunnel. You no longer hear wrapping film rushing through the machine. But every decision you make still travels downward into the hands of people who do. You began with raw ingredients that looked nothing like chocolate. Now you decide what the world will crave next. You began with a chocolate bar most people would open without thinking. A soft crackle of paper. A clean surface. A sweet smell. A small break between neat squares. To the customer, chocolate feels simple because the factory has already hidden the complexity. But you saw what came before the sweetness. You stood in the ingredient warehouse where cocoa, sugar, milk powder, cocoa butter, cartons and wrapping materials waited under cold white lights. You learned that one wrong batch can travel farther than one worker expects. Then you entered the roasting room where heat changed the beans. You moved into grinding and mixing where texture came from pressure, friction and patience. You watched tempering turn chocolate glossy through careful temperature control. You helped molds, vibration and cooling give it shape. Then you inspected it. You learned that a finished bar can still fail under light. You learned that perfect chocolate can still be ruined by poor packaging. You learned that managing a shift means balancing flavor, machines, people, time, quality, and shipping without pretending every problem can be solved cleanly. Higher up, chocolate stopped being only chocolate. It became cocoa shipments, sugar supply, packaging sleeves, container routes, holiday demand, forecast errors, and market timing. At the very top, chocolate sat on a polished table as a sample, while people discussed flavor, price, packaging, volume, and global launch strategy. But you knew what was inside that sample. Heat, labor, timing, pressure, judgment, distance. A chocolate bar is never just a chocolate bar. It is a ladder of invisible work compressed into something small enough to hold in one hand. The sweeter it looks on the shelf, the easier it is to forget the machines, workers, ingredients, and decisions behind it. And that is the hidden truth of global products. The cleaner they appear to the customer, the more carefully the factory has buried the pressure. If you want to see another hidden system from the bottom to the top, comment which factory, brand, or global supply chain we should enter next. And subscribe for more stories from inside every level.